Hi guys. Today we'll be talking about Chapter 12, which is over the bureaucracy and the public policy process. And I'm going to start off by talking about the bureaucracy. So the bureaucracy is basically a form of an organization, that operates through impersonal uniform regulation and procedures, and this includes government organizations and employees who must faithfully execute laws on the behalf of the president, Congress, and the judiciary. And within the bureaucracy is four different types of federal organizations. The first one being departments, they have the biggest missions and budgets because it's the largest of the federal organizations and it's the most visible. There are 15 different departments that employ 70% of civil servants, and they're responsible for 93% of federal dollars. So that's obviously a huge chunk. And within the departments, there's the inner cabinet, which includes 5 of the most important departments that the president meets with on a regular basis, and that includes the Department of Defense, Health and Human Services, Justice, State, and Treasury. And there's also an outer cabinet, which has the 10 of the less important departments. But each of the departments was either created by merging, separating, or elevating, which means either different agencies were merged together to create a department. A department was separated into 2 different branches, or an agency was elevated to the stance of a department, I guess you can say. The second federal organization there is the independent standalone agencies, which is separate from traditional departments, and they usually work on a separate specific problem that is headed by an administrator or a director. There's also the Independent Regulatory Commission, which is independent from Congress and the president and just basically works to regulate the bureaucracy and just carries out legislation. But it's headed by commissioners that the president appoints and the Senate approves of, but Congress is the one that creates the different types of regulatory commissions. And an example of that would be the FCC, which is the Federal Communications Commission, which Mrs. Kripe has touched on a little bit, but basically they just figure out or they just regulate what can and can't be said within TV and different media. The last federal organization is the government corporations, which actually acts more like a business, and therefore they have more freedom. So there's less internal regulations. They have the ability to hire and fire different people, and they can make money. An example of this would be the U.S. Postal Service and Amtrak. Now, moving on, there are 3 different types of federal employees. There are presidential appointees, which includes 3,000 different heads of federal departments and agencies. 600 of those appointees, are approved by Senate, while the other portion work without the confirmation by the Senate. And then there's also, the president can also appoint U.S. Marshals, attorneys, and ambassadors to foreign countries. And all of the presidential appointees submit their resignation at the end of the president's final year in office. The other type of federal employee includes the senior executive service members, and there are over 7,000 members who work closely with the presidential appointees to manage the government. And they're selected through a highly competitive process. Lastly, there are civil service workers, and they are federal employees who work for the government. They used to be hired mainly through the spoils system, which is what we talked about, especially with our vocab list, which is rewarding party loyalists or friends with a government position, and then they were also chosen through patronage, which is giving favors to different civil service workers in return for a vote. But this was stopped by the Pendleton Act, which set up a merit service or a merit system to eliminate this problem. And then unions are also a part of or can be a part of the civil service work, and there are restrictions to them, but basically it helps different workers improve on certain policies. Um, and then moving on, there are also regulatory employee, like you have to regulate the employee's conduct. And a big example of this would be the Hatch Act, which was created so federal employees don't affect election outcomes while administrating laws. And it's been loosened up since it was originally created, and now employees can also hold a position within a party and be involved in party fundraising as long as it doesn't they don't include that influence within their federal job. So this just makes sure that there's not much corruption going on within the government employees' work, and that they're not trying to influence other people to vote a certain way and do all that. So I'm going to be passing the rest of this video along to Zoe. Have a good time.
All right, thanks, Sarah. So firstly, I'll be talking about the federal bureaucracy and its role in government. So basically, they're in charge of implementing all the policy that the government's created into action. And so this requires, obviously, reasonable judgment in the entire process. And so there's three methods of implementation that the federal bureaucracy uses. The first one is making regulations, and this is just the rulemaking process, telling citizens, corporation, and basically the government what they can and can't do. Second one is raising revenue, usually through taxes. And the third one is spending money, and this is typically the non-discretionary spending with the entitlement programs like Social Security. And then controlling the federal bureaucracy, obviously the president is going to want to have a little bit of control over the bureaucracy. And so the OMB helps him with that, making sure that, every type of legislation is in line with his agenda. And Congress can have any form of oversight by asking for information from the bureaucracy. So next I'll be talking about public policy, and this is just basically the government coming up with a specific plan to help solve an issue. And so there's three types, and the first one is distributive. So everybody benefits from this, and these are national parks, highways, and stuff. And then redistributive, which takes money from one group and basically gives it to another in order to benefit. So this is usually done through taxation, like Medicare and things of that nature. The last one is the reverse distributive, where basically everybody loses. So this is money being taken away from everybody at every single level of income. So if Bernie Sanders wins the election, giving equal access to college, everybody would be losing money in that regard. It would be almost flat tax. So basically the pathway of forming public policy is as follows. First, bureaucracy makes assumptions about problems going on. Then they set the agenda for what they would like to do. So bipartisan think tanks often help out with this. Then they decide to act, and then they decide how much they want to do about it, if they want it to be an incremental or a comprehensive policy, if they want to do this action in slow increments, or if they want to just bring in an immediate change all at once. And so in this way, then the next step, they find a solution, they choose a solution, and then they decide who will deliver this. So who will take on the baton of making sure this new law will be enacted. And then they have to pass the laws we've been talking about all year. We all know that process. And then comes the part of actually running the program. So this is what's hard. So obviously looking at this whole entire process, it's obviously lengthy, and it's a lot more work than we think it is, and it can be quite complicated. And so public policy and citizens, sometimes citizens don't believe that they have much of a say in the government, but with public policy, citizens can vote on, certain senators who they think that will support their views, and also paying attention to current events and forming an educated opinion and writing to your congressmen. And perhaps if you really care that much about it, you can join the actual process. Thank you for listening to me and Sarah's video, and good luck with the test.